Good evening, and welcome to our virtual forum. All right, great start. Welcome to the virtual forum with the City of Roswell. Today's topic is Money Matters with an emphasis in enterprise funds. I'm Joe Neeb. I'm the Roswell City Manager, and I'm going to be participating with a lot of guests. As we're going through the process, don't forget to like and share and interact with our post, and just let us know that you're watching. Along with the watching, place any questions you would like answered into the comments. And now I'm going to introduce my initial guest. We'll have a few others that are going to be coming a little bit later with us. But tonight I want to introduce a lot of our directors here. And so, Lorenzo, if you can start off and just tell them their name and what your responsibilities are.
Okay, my name is Lorenzo Sanchez. I'm the Utilities Director. My duties essentially are I'm over water maintenance, water production, and wastewater, also the warehouse. So I ensure that we keep all those essential services functioning and operating smoothly.
So your whole crew makes sure that the water gets to the house?
Make sure the water gets to the house, and then
and when they're all done with it, then it gets back out.
It gets back out.
And through all that, I know that it's a very regulatory system, and so you have a lot of work that you have to do with that. And I won't tie you down on a lot of questions right now, because we'll wait till your crew gets out here, your deputy directors as well, and we can cover that in a lot more detail. I want to introduce some of the other directors. Scott Stark.
Hi, I'm Scott Stark. I'm the Air Center Director, and my job is to make sure that everything goes well at the airport. And to a certain extent, it's very multifaceted. We deal with the safety issues on the airport itself. We deal with making sure that the airlines are able to function properly. We make sure that the surfaces are safe to land and take off on, and that everybody goes home safely at the end of the day.
Okay, all right. And it's a very big asset for the city in order to have I know that everybody, including the county, the state, recognizes this economic driver for the city. So we're so thankful for all the support for that facility. Abraham Chaparro.
How you doing? Abraham Chaparro, Solid Waste Director. So in essence, our department oversees the collection and disposal of the solid waste, refuse, garbage throughout the city for our residential and commercial accounts. Also, a lot of our drivers, we drive the alleys, we pick up your bulk trash. We're kind of the eyes and ears, the entire city, because we utilize the entire city 5 days a week. And we kind of keep an eye on the sanitation and make sure we keep the city clean and free of any bulk trash and collect your refuse appropriately and dispose of it in accordance with state and federal laws.
Now, Abraham, I know that just recently at the last city council meeting, we had a big conversation about the landfill, the cell 5A, and the closure of cell 4. So I'm assuming, I expect that we're going to have a lot of questions for you as to what is happening out of that enterprise fund. And Juan Fuentes.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Juan Fuentes. I'm the Director of Administrative Services, and I'm part of the administrative team for the city. One of the roles is to serve as support and a leadership role to some of the departments throughout the city. And one of those is all those that are grouped and considered enterprise funds. And I work with the directors here with us today on some of their projects and some of their needs. So it is an umbrella that I get the pleasure to work with them on a lot of different projects.
All right, thank you. Now, gentlemen, before we get into the questions that we've received from our citizens and from the people that are watching, do not forget to like us and share and post everything out there. But give us more questions as well, too. But before we get into those questions, Juan, I was hoping that you could kind of explain a little bit, because this forum tonight is on Money Matters Enterprise Funds. So exactly how many types of funds do we have? How do we break it down? And then what is an enterprise fund?
Okay. Good question, Joe. So the city operates with about 6 different types of funds that are established by the state. They categorize the different type of activities. We have the general fund. We have special revenue funds. We have capital funds. We have debt service funds, trust and agency funds, and of course the enterprise funds. So just from the top funds that we have, general fund covers everything that just like the title says, general. Your police, your fire, municipal court, all of those services that we provide. Special revenue funds are things like the recreation fund, the street fund, that are very specific to that activity. And of course, your enterprise funds, one of the major funds, are your business type activities, such as your water, your wastewater, your sewer, landfill, and your airport. It's those activities that almost act like a business.
Okay, thank you. You know, and for the first question that we have, what factors are used to determine which departments should operate as enterprise funds? You know, for everybody that may have not been able to watch this, last year through the COVID, we ended up establishing a couple of our funds as special revenue funds. So we removed the zoo, Spring River Zoo out, and the Roswell Arts and Museum. We moved those out of the category of the general fund and set them up as special revenue funds. So what factors do constitute? How do we establish an enterprise fund?
Well, so enterprise funds, again, are very specific because they are classified as business-like activities. So their services are really supported by the rates that are established that customers pay in. For example, when you pay your utility bill, you're paying a rate on your water, you're paying a rate on your wastewater, solid waste. At the airport, for example, they have a lot of assets at the airport where they charge for leases, they charge for the airspace out there, for the runways, for the different airlines to use the facility. The special revenue funds that we established for the museum and for the zoo, they also set up and established their own rates. However, they're not treated in the eyes of the state as enterprise, but they're more treated as special revenue because they're generating that specific revenue for that activity that goes to those departments.
Okay, thank you. Does the city foresee any additional departments possibly going to be set up as an enterprise fund?
At this time, the city of Roswell pretty much has an established enterprise funds that are typical in New Mexico. Again, it's all the utilities based, that those are the typical enterprise funds that we have.
You know, I think that one that we've talked about over time, and it's just never come about, is the opportunity actually to do a street utility in order to generate enough funds for transportation issues. But I know that there's nobody that's taken a position to say, yeah, let's look at this even farther. I think what we've tried to do is we've tried to utilize the dollars that we have had and try to contribute those dollars to that. So we're trying to live within our means is what we're trying to get with. Another question is that if an enterprise fund has an excess of funds in it, is it possible under certain circumstances to transfer into another department for other purposes, for other uses, essentially? And if so, what are those limited situations that can occur? I know that the answer to this one is yes, but and I know on the broadest level for me is that the enterprise funds have to take care of their mission first. They have to take care of all costs that are associated with maintaining it, any debt service, any of those other costs with that. But is there anything else to add to that?
Joe, so even enterprise funds, and the state does allow some of the proceeds from those different services to be transferred over to other funds that help support their activities. For example, whether it be the purchasing, whether it be legal, some of those transfers can be done to some of the other departments or funds like the general fund that help support their overall mission for the operating of their day-to-day services.
I know one of the questions that came up at the city council meeting the other night as well too was essentially all of the enterprise funds contribute some dollars into the general fund as an indirect expense. And it's my understanding that those dollars that move from the enterprise fund into the general fund is essentially to take care of the HR needs of that department, the finance needs. And so we have one finance department in the city. It takes care of all those different needs for all these enterprise funds. It is my understanding that we outside of the city council establishing a purpose, none of that money can be used on something else without that city council action that says this is what those funds can be used for. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The budget is established annually by the city council, and it is approved also by the state. So every year, we go through the budget process, and it gets approved at both the council level and state level.
Okay. All right. And really quickly, I'll take this question here in just a second, but I know that I wanted to share just some information that I received on one of the questions that were out there. It'll probably pop up at a later date, but I'm going to go ahead and take it because I want to make sure that it gets addressed and taken as seriously as it can be. There's a lot of individuals out there that don't understand why we would borrow money or spend our own money. And so there is ability. I think we try to balance those things out. We try to save up as much money as we can to go out and do those big capital purchases. That's not, but when interest rates are low, then it makes more sense economically to borrow against those dollars rather than to deplete your funds as we go through that and then come into that. So I think the one thing that got in the last city council meeting that we talked about is that I don't think everybody understands the amount of money that we have which in each one of those funds. And I'm just going to read some numbers really quickly here that, as of December 2020, the fund balance of water and wastewater were $10.1 million. And I'll talk a little bit about what the expenses are on that, but $10.1 million is a considerable amount of reserves, cash and reserves for that. Solid waste has a $5.6 million. So I know that Abraham, you were there with the city council talking about borrowing money for opening up cell 5. We had a big piece of equipment that we needed to purchase as well too that failed on us through that time frame. How much was that borrowing? What was that total amount?
The total amount for the new compactor was $1.2 million.
1.2 million for the compactor and the borrowing for the cell?
It's 3.3 million.
3.3. So when you look at those numbers, we do have the cash on hand in order to cover those costs, but I think that's where we go back to you, Juan, and we start talking about the nature of leveraging our funds so that we can move farther faster rather than to deplete all of our cash on hand. So
That's correct, Joe. And I think although there might be some funds for this one-time expense, there's quite a bit of need at the landfill and the sanitation that is an ongoing equipment replacement program, whether it's the solid waste trash trucks, whether it's planning for future cell development and expansion. There's just other emergencies that it is difficult to foresee coming ahead that allowing us to have some reserves gives us the ability not only to be able to meet those emergencies, but also to be able to match them for a bigger project. When we apply for grants, when we receive an opportunity, then we have the ability to be able to match it, to be able to complete a project. So having reserves, it is fiscally sound for us to be able to do that so we can be better prepared for the future needs of the enterprise.
Yeah. Thank you. And I know that even like with the general fund, we carry a reserve of about 3/12. So that means 3 months of money that we're carrying in the bank for that. When I look at each one of these, there's not an enterprise fund out there that is less than 3 months coverage within their reserves. And I think that's a good thing. And I did not talk about the Air Center. The Air Center, as of December, has $3.9 million in its reserves in order to cover any unforeseen expenses that are out there. And I think that we'll get to the Air Center in just a second because I know we're just getting into a couple really good questions for that, and so we're gonna actually focus right now on the solid waste and the Air Center, and then we'll kind of come back around as we make some adjustments with our personnel up here. But let's start with you, Abraham. No, let's start with Scott. Scott, you haven't got to say much, so I'll put you on the spot a little bit. But What are some of the major projects, improvements, maintenance, and otherwise going on in the next year or two? I know that through your discretionary funding or the non-discretionary funding that you have, grant money from the federal and the state government, we're going to be spending almost $20 million out there at the Air Center over the next 5 years.
We are.
What are some of the things that are going to be happening out there? What are we working on?
So coming up quickly, one of the projects that we're going to be doing almost immediately, we're in the process of design right now. We're going to be building a covered parking lot for vehicle parking at the airport. That'll take probably several months to get through that project. We're in design right now. As soon as we get through with that, we'll go out to bid and go through that process and actually start the project working. And so that by this time next year, we should be done with that. That is around a $2 million project. After that, or maybe even at the same time, it should fall pretty close to the same time. We're also working on a project on the airport apron, which is about a $3.4 million project. So some of that concrete and asphalt is very old, from the 40s and the 50s, and needs replacement. It's been maintained all these years, but they do have a lifespan and eventually wear out. And that's where we are with that concrete. So we'll be replacing that. And then further down the road, we'll be looking at drainage studies on the airport to study how the water drains off the airport, as well as a major runway project that'll be a $14 million project in about 3 years.
So how many stored airplanes are out there right now?
As of Friday, there are 499 airliners out there. So it could have changed a little bit this week, but that's the number as of Friday.
Abraham, what about you? You know, I know that you've been in rebuilding your department and everything. We had a lot of individuals that have changed out, and so what's going on out at the solid waste?
As you noted earlier, one of our biggest projects right now is focusing on opening up Cell 5A, kind of wrapping up Cell 4 and opening that Cell 5A. It's already went out to bid. We have a lot of interested parties that are involved, and the city engineering department as well has assisted us in kind of moving us in the right direction. We have a very tight time schedule, but we are looking to wrap that up relatively quickly, open it up so we can continue the service that we provide for the city.
All right. I think one of the big things that we want to make sure that everybody's aware of, that we have shifted how we're handling recycling. We have partnered with an outside firm in order to do the recycling. Be watching from the city, though, because we still want to make sure that we're diverting a lot of our waste into the recyclables, and so we'll be sending out a lot of educational material. I believe you're working on that now, and I want to make sure that our viewers have that. Can you really quickly, can you explain what is a cell that we keep talking about?
That's actually a great question. We kind of use that terminology a lot at the landfill. A cell is just kind of essentially the giant hole that we have where we put the garbage in every day. So we refer to them as units or cells. So the cells kind of fill up, kind of like a cell, like you would see either a large cell from an animal cell. It's huge, it's round, it's shaped a specific way so we can capture all the garbage and line it appropriately, just like a regular human cell.
Fantastic. The time is really running very quickly, and so I do want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity, because I want to introduce all of the professionals that we have working for the city of Roswell. So we're going to get ready here, and we're going to start to make a change and bring in some other individuals, I think. And Lorenzo, I think you're going to stay with me and walk through some of that. And so we're going to go ahead, and I'll cover a couple of these other questions. Actually, what I want to do before I take the question, I'll let everybody get in here. I want to share a couple things with you. This is the 2021 final budget. You can find it out on the website. You don't have to get the big packet on that. But one of the sections that becomes very important that gets used a lot is actually section 1. It has a working summary of all of our accounts, all of our funds. It talks about what our revenue is that's coming in and our expenses going out. It shows exactly how much money we have in the bank. I think the city as a whole has $22 million at the start of this budget as to how we were going to walk through that. The other document, I'll just say really quickly, if you haven't seen it, it is out on the website as well too. We covered it at the last city council meeting. It is our annual report. I really believe that the one thing that we want everybody to know is first, this book here tells everybody how we're going to spend your money. And then this book here tells you how we spent your money. And as part of our transparency in government, trying to make sure that everybody is aware of how we're spending your money. Because, you know, I think that the hard thing for everybody to understand is that the city is in great financial shape. It does leverage its funds. It does borrow when necessary to stretch out those dollars. I think the question really comes down to the subjective nature of what should we be spending our money on. I think because we don't have enough to do it all, so it becomes a prioritization of that. Lorenzo, if we can, let's introduce our new crew.
Okay.
And your deputy directors that help you do your fantastic work.
Okay, right here sitting next to me is Andrew Valadez. He's my deputy superintendent of the wastewater treatment plant. He handles the wastewater treatment of all the waste that goes out to the wastewater treatment plant, where he treats about average 3 million to 3.2 million gallons per day of waste that he receives, along with maintaining and stripping the collection system. Jesus Talamantes, next to Andrew, he's over water production. He is in charge of maintaining all the wells, all the water production, all the reservoirs, maintain proper chlorine residuals in the system, and making sure that all that equipment stays in proper operating conditions. And then we got Robert Glenn at the end right there. He oversees water maintenance, so he's in charge of essentially taking care of about 350 miles of water main lines, fire hydrants, valves, transmission lines, new meters cost, anything and everything that has to do with the water system.
Wonderful. And we'll just go down the line, because one of the big things is that how many people do we have in each one of these departments that are out there serving the community? And Andrew, I'm gonna put you on the spot first.
We got an estimated 21 employees.
21 employees, all right. And they take care of all of that out there. I think the one thing that everybody doesn't understand or anything is that it's a really regulatory process.
Yes.
We have our permits that we are required, because as we bring in the waste, it has to, I guess, give me the journey of what happens when we send the waste out there.
Yes.
What happens to it, and then where does it go?
Yeah, it goes through a process. So we treat an estimated 1.3 billion gallons of wastewater per year. So it goes through a process, goes through a mechanical filter, and then through the primary clarifiers, where it's we've got to meet certain requirements when discharged to the farmers and to the river.
Okay, so on the front side, what it does is that, because I'm assuming that anybody that flushes an alligator,
Yes.
it's up out at the plant, and
Yeah.
so you're removing that out of the system first,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And then,
we're removing all that.
And so you're removing all that waste, that hard waste and everything out of that.
All the rags and stuff
Okay,
like that.
and
it goes
then
through-
and then you retreat the water in your system.
Right, it goes through a grit chamber to get rid of all the grits, because it's pretty hazardous
Okay.
to all our pumps, motors, and stuff like that. And then it goes to primary clarifiers, where it's another solid separation. Then it goes through a aeration basin, that's where the biological process takes place, and that starts getting rid of the solids, where all the bacteria starts feeding off of the solids, and then out over to a final clarifier, where another solid separation goes, and it gets returned to the aeration basins. And what it does, it sends bacteria back to feed off the rest of the solids. So.
And I guess the way I understand it as well too, you put the water back out into the system,
Yes,
probably
sir.
even better than you got it.
Definitely. 100%.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Suze, I think another name for that department out there is central control.
Yes,
That's
correct.
what we title it. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
We actually produce the water through 20 production wells for the city, and we disinfect the water. We have what's called a floating system, which these reservoirs, once demand is met throughout the city, that water will go into our reservoirs and fill them up. And as demand fluctuates, those water wells will turn on and on. And another thing that wasn't mentioned, we do take care of the smart water meters that are throughout the city, as far as the maintenance and repair. So that's what we do.
About how many employees do you have?
We have right now 13.
And
13
and
employees.
part of those employees too, we call them, most of them operators, but
Yes.
you're the ones that go out there, and when we need to double check a meter reading as well too, you're going out there and checking that meter reading,
Yes.
making sure that the numbers are correct as they go in there to make sure that
Yes.
we're doing proper billing for our citizens. I guess the one, and so you're taking care of the water, you're pulling it out of the ground.
Correct.
We're doing some treatment to it, and then we're giving it out to the people for use, and then we bring it back, and then Andrew does his
Yes.
magic as well.
We're on what they call the clean end.
Yes.
That's right, that's right. And so, and it's a regulatory system as well, too. You have a permit, you have to
Yes.
meet a certain requirement as to.
We have certain water rights we can use
Yep.
throughout the year and whatnot. So.
And I think that's something interesting for everybody to know, that Roswell went through and purchased a bunch of farms out there with water rights over the years in order to make sure that the city had enough water as it was growing.
Yes.
So, all right. All right, Robert, how many employees does water distribution, all those 350 miles lines, how are we taking care of those?
We have 27 employees, including the city warehouse.
Okay. And so Jesus makes sure that the water gets out of the ground, makes sure that it gets ready to go into the system. Andrew makes sure that when he gets it back, so
We're the middleman.
you're the middleman. All right. All right. And so with what you're doing is again, you make sure that all these lines that are in the ground can get the water to the homes, I believe. And we have a lot of different sizes of main lines, and can you tell us a little bit about
We
yours?
have a tremendous, we have everything from 42 inch to 1 inch. And we take care of it all.
Yeah.
It is a challenging job because we have infrastructure that's been in the ground for a long time. We have newer stuff, and trying to get it all to play nice together, it can be interesting from time to time.
All right, and I think like you break your people up into like 5 crews, and they're out there all over the city.
Yes, we have
Spotting that.
four-man crews.
It's kind of like Superman flying over Metropolis, I believe. I don't know. All right. Jesus, I'll come back to you because I think you do what's called the Consumer Confidence Report, I believe. You manage
Yes,
that because
correct.
we're required by EPA law and everything. So, the question that we're receiving is what regulations, laws specifically does our water have to meet? And so I know that document we put out once a year to all of our customers to make sure that the water is safe and what we've dealt with. But can you expand on that?
Usually what's in the CCR is pretty much the contaminant levels that are in
Okay.
the water, which, during my time and way before that, I know we haven't, gone over those maximum contaminants.
Yeah.
So that's currently in the process right now, is
Good.
what I'm doing now. So that's out for the public. We put it in the newspaper for everybody to see also.
All right. Now, and for all of you, and we'll just run down the line fairly quickly with all of these, but because you have a lot of projects going on. So, I think one of the questions that everybody out there has on their mind, when are we going to close Garden Street again? Robert?
15 minutes? Hopefully not for a while, but we do have projects planned for that area again.
Yeah.
To continue on with what we did this last year.
Yeah, okay. What other projects do you have out there then citywide?
Right
Anything?
now, we're finishing up over on Lee and Deming with the bridge replacement project over there. We expanded out and redid some water lines. From there, we're gonna move over to Alameda and replace some main lines that we're having problems with over there.
Okay,
And then we'll just see where we go from there.
all right. Jesus, what about you?
I think our biggest priority right now is VFDs at all our well sites. We've already done 6 of them.
What's a
A
VFD?
VFD is a variable frequency drive, which allows these wells to ramp up and ramp down a little bit slower. And what that does is minimize line breaks throughout the system and weak points. So that's going to help out the city quite a bit.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm going to kind of dumb it down to my level as well too, but one of the things that people don't understand within our system is that vibration causes a lot of our problems.
Correct, yes.
And so anytime that we turn on a fire hydrant or a valve opens or closes, there's this little push where that pressure of that water goes into the system a little bit differently, right? And so our water breaks are primarily caused by the age of the piping and then the just that pressure causing that adjustment. Is that correct?
Yes, it's what they call water hammer.
Okay, all right, so it's really important to make sure that we're very careful with that, because as the pipe ages, it gets even worse.
Yeah.
And so, I know that we have about 75 miles worth of asbestos line pipe, which was all great in the 50s, but we now need to be getting it out of the ground as well too. So I know that you guys are all looking at that as well too, to make sure that we keep those in there. Andrew?
Dewatering facility is what we got going on this year. What it is water solid separation. And with Roswell growing, our beds that we have now currently are just getting overloaded in the winter months. So
Okay.
that facility is very important to our drying process and our
Yeah.
biosolids.
So we have to remove all of that out of those solids
Yes,
and
sir.
everything. And
Then it goes over.
we just did a $5.5 million project on a drying press, right? And
Yes.
so a screw press is what they call it.
Yes, sir. Dewatering facility.
So, okay. Lorenzo, is there anything more that we should add to any of those ongoing projects?
Well, we did have our large diameter valve project that we just finished. That was about $1.6 million. And we just completed, that's 100% complete now. We just paid the final invoices on that. So, I mean, the infrastructure, I mean, it's very expensive for the maintenance and repair. It sounds like there's a lot of money in these funds, but we can spend that very quickly on these huge projects. Just like the screw presses, the dewatering building, that's $5.5 million worth of funding right there. We got another dissolved oxygen basin that we're gonna have to meet some new permit limits on that. That's gonna be about another $800,000. We got several more large diameter valves that need replacement that are broke right now that we need to get repaired, replaced. That way we can isolate these large systems, the transmission lines, because if we don't be able to shut it down, then we get in a big bind on trying to keep everybody in service. And that's our main function, is try to keep it minimal to how long we have everybody out of service. So we do our best to do that. But I mean, it's very expensive. The VFD project, that one's, I mean, in the millions of dollars. We just, like I said, we got 6 done right now. We're currently working to get more done. So we're going to continue on that one. We got a manhole rehab project where we're constantly trying to rehab the manholes because they're old, they're deteriorating with the gases in the manholes. So we're going to continue on that one. So, I mean, we got tons of projects going, and they're going to just keep continuing coming at us. So it's a very expensive process.
Wonderful. You know, gentlemen, and you'll never get told this enough, but thank you for what you're doing. I think you're kind of that hidden team that's out there that nobody really knows that you're there unless there's a problem. And the way you take care of your problems, way we bring it up as quickly as we can. I just want to say thank you for all of that, and we appreciate you being here and sharing a little bit of your wisdom within the system. And so, you know, Roswell should be they're blessed with these gentlemen in order to do that job. We're going to go ahead and switch out staff again. So I'm gonna cover just a few other things. I know there was a question out there that I wanted to go ahead and address. Do make sure that when you're out there and you're watching, let us know what is going on. Is there? I guess we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys one more question before I let you sneak out of here. But you know, is there anything else that you want to add or share about Roswell, about your job, about anything that is going on out there? But as we go through all this, so before we switch you out.
You know, me, myself, I just want to thank these gentlemen. They're my right hands that keep these departments operating every day. They're out there working hard. We got tons of staff alongside with them. They help us keep it going. We got supervisors, administrative assistants, operators, maintenance workers, meter readers, laborers, and they all help us keep the job functioning on a daily. So we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for the great job that you do in helping us keeping the systems operating. So thank you very much.
All right, fantastic.
I would like
Thank
to add,
you.
I would like to add
Yes,
one
sir.
thing. If you're having any kind of sewer issues, always call the city first before you call a plumber, because that's our job. We're available 24/7, so please call us first.
And I don't know, Jesus, do you have that number memorized? Because you have a crew out there all the time watching the phones and
Yes,
everything,
correct.
so you have that
Yeah.
number off your head?
Yeah, it's 575-347-5421.
And so if there's any issue, if they don't
Yes.
know what to do, they call us.
Yes, correct.
And I'm assuming any one of your crew will go out there and try to help and
Yeah.
at least direct accordingly.
And that also goes for the water maintenance lines, the meters, any issues you have, you can go ahead and call us.
Central Controls man 24/7.
Yes, correct.
Wastewater treatment plant phone number is 622-1449.
Wonderful.
I don't know mine.
Water department.
Everybody calls
maintenance.
Jesus.
Well, you're usually in the street, right?
Yeah.
You're out in the field, so, okay. Thank you again, gentlemen, for all of that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna answer a question that was out there because somebody was asking how much dollars that we have within each one of these current funds. And I wanted to pull out, again, the budget summary, the final summary, as we're changing out and switching out our people, but as I talked about with the, let's start with the airport fund. The airport fund has available cash balance of 2.2 million, and we have a total expense within that of 6.9. So we're covering the budget itself of 6.9 million, so we have enough money in order to cover our budget, so our budget is balanced, and then we also have 2.3 million essentially sitting in reserves for that when we're looking at those numbers. You look at the solid waste fund, solid waste actually runs for about 6.9 million in expenses. And we were sitting, when we did the budget, at $4.8 million in the reserves. And as I had stated earlier, solid waste was at 5.6 in December of 2020. So that number was going up because we were saving money in order to help offset the impact of these big expenses that are there. Water and sewer, I'll tell you that the sheet is broken up in different ones, even though it's one fund. There's two funds. Water fund, we have a budget of $13.9 million for water, and wastewater, we have a budget of $8.4 million. And we are carrying in water and wastewater $10.1 million. So when I talk to you about the expenses, that's a balanced budget. So we have revenue to cover those expenses based upon the user fees, based upon on all of these costs that are associated with that. And then we have money that is sitting in the back for that reserve, for that rainy day. And I think one of the things we'll talk about, because I think that I know most of our enterprise funds are working on what's called a rate study, and I know that was one of the other questions as well too. We're going to try to answer a couple questions with that, but that rate study looks at our services that we're providing. It looks at all these new projects that we have to do, and then we're going to balance out what those services are. So how's the rate study going? Anybody want to answer that?
Yes, Joe, I'll certainly jump in on that. So the rate study, again, as Joe mentioned, I think we are looking at reviewing all of our rates for the water, the wastewater, the solid waste collection side, as well as the solid waste landfill. So on a regular basis, the state, especially state funding agencies that will support us with grants or other financial assistance, will ask us and will require that we do a rate study. And the purpose of that is just to make sure that we have our rates set at the appropriate level to be able to fund all of our personnel, all of our operating, all of our capital, and any future needs for capital, as well as any debt service. So that is what right now we're currently undergoing. It is about a 3-month to 4-month process. And we have hired an outside firm to kind of look at all the rates, and they're gathering all of the data, all of the information and historical numbers to be better able to give us a good established rate for all of the enterprise funds.
Okay, and I'm gonna digress for just a little bit, and then I'll ask all of you a little bit more, because Now, enterprise funds, for the largest purpose for enterprise funds is, it is a fund that is driven by user fees. So we had some questions out there about, are there any funds out there that, does it affect the GRT, which is gross receipts tax, which is anytime you purchase in the city, that's a sales tax, essentially. But enterprise funds are based generally off of user fees. And so they're self-contained funds, and we'll get to the Air Center here in just a second, because I think the Air Center is a little bit different in that whole structure of how those user fees are. But I guess when we look at how those fees are charged to support, can you explain a little bit more about that user fee? So I'm assuming that with that rate study, we figure out exactly what the cost of the service is, and we bring it down to how much everybody pays. And so,
And that is correct, Joe. So the study, at the end of the day, it will give us a recommended rate for all of the different type of services that we provide. So if you take, for example, the water side, we have customers some customers have a 3/4 inch meter. Some customers may have a 1 inch or even larger meter. So the user rates will be established to set the right level for each, not only for each of the meters, but also for the per 1,000 gallon water consumption, which also will translate into the method of establishing the wastewater and the sewer rates. So all of that information and the analysis will be prepared and presented to the city for review, consideration, and adoption of the new rates. And again, it's just wanted to emphasize that it is important because our funding agencies at the state level will look at whether or not the city of Roswell has updated their rates through a rate study, and this will go towards a long ways of being able to meet that requirement.
okay, thank you, Juan. Now, Abraham, user fees, I understand that, and it comes in different types, but you got different types of users at the solid waste. I think that there's one expense for user fee for residential. There's one expense for commercial. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the residential is built into your water bill that everybody pays, that participates within the city, within the confines of the city of Roswell. The residential commercial fees, that's kind of people that come out and say, hey, look, I want to borrow a 40-yard container, I'm demoing my roof, I'm demoing my house. Or other commercial businesses that are doing demos in the city, they bring their refuse to us, we rent out the containers, they bring it to us, we charge a tipping fee. As well as regular businesses that have franchise fees with us that work within the city, they also utilize the landfill as well, and they also come over and deposit their waste with us and then pay a percentage of their franchise fee.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think one of the questions that came across is that are there any grants or and we'll hold Air Center off for just a second, but are there any grants or taxes that go to any of our enterprise funds?
So in regards to any grants, again, the enterprise funds do receive state grants for some of their big, large projects. As it was discussed earlier, some of the projects are ranged in millions of dollars. As far as any taxes, the primary taxes are primarily supporting the general fund, whether it's the gross receipts tax or property. Again, user rates are what's primarily supports the enterprise funds.
So, I know, Abraham, you have underneath your responsibility as well too, what's called the Clean and Safe program. That's where we're going out, tearing down dilapidated buildings and everything. That is covered by an environmental tax. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We do help the city when we get buildings or houses that are condemned, or someone that just wants to clean up their properties. We're able to allow them help, and that tax, environmental tax will help us process that waste and get it to the landfill disposal.
All right, I'm going to run to Scott really quickly here too, because as an enterprise fund, you rely a lot on user fees, and I'm assuming. Tell me how that's all structured out there.
Actually, we do, Joe. We rely a lot on lease fees. We have about 60 buildings that we lease. We have a number of land leases where different facilities are built by private industry on those land leases, and the lease money comes in at about $1.7 million per year. Additionally, this year we've had a big boom because of COVID and all the jet airliners, which you mentioned earlier, that are stored out there. That has almost quadrupled in this last year, and we're running a little bit over $2 million in revenue on those storage fees at this time. Other things that we have are smaller numbers from passenger facility charges, basically the ticket tax that you pay when you get on an airplane, and then other smaller fees that we have out there. But most of the capital projects that we do are done with various grants from FAA and other sources.
Okay, I think one thing that I want to make sure we impress upon that airport as well too is that out of those capital projects, 90% of the funds for most of the capital projects out there come from federal government. 5% comes from the state?
We split a 3.125 is what we get.
So the city only contributes so much. I want to thank you all for stepping in and helping with this public forum. Again, I appreciate everything that you're doing. I want to make sure that you out there understand who is out there. Don't forget to join us for our next virtual public forum. It's scheduled for April 15th at 5:30, and we're going to focus on Ward 4. But you're invited, even if you don't live in Ward 4, you are more than welcome to join us for that. Just remember to submit your topics and questions. We believe that these virtual forums are functioning very well to give you a better mix of individuals that are out there. So please visit roswell-nm.gov for all your information that's city related. And just keep submitting your questions. Keep telling us what to do. And I want to thank you. I'm Joe Neeb, City Manager for the City of Roswell.